Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of Bronx Bombers. My name is Joe Rubenstein and it is Thursday, November 1st, and the Yankees are currently in hibernation, at least the players. The brain trust is doubtless burning the midnight oil, trying to come up with a plan to beat the Red Sox and their bloated payroll in 2019. And the Red Sox, of course, won their 9th World Series title on Sunday in convincing fashion, their 4th championship this century, while the Yankees remain stuck on one, Boston demolishing the Dodgers in 5 games. And I was trying to think of a World Series participant in recent memory with a less intimidating lineup than this year's Dodgers, and I came up empty. I mean, maybe the Mets in 2015, but LA was just, a punchless team there, whose ace, Clayton Kershaw, was just horrendous, and whose manager, Dave Roberts, made the opposite mistake that Boone made in the ALDS. Roberts lifted starters who were performing well too soon, for no reason whatsoever, especially Rich Hill, I guess because, his iPad told him to, and it burned him. It burned him bad, and I don't think we're going to see the Dodgers in the Fall Classic again next year. I think that's a team on the downslope, and I also think the National League is pretty lacking right now in general. I think the Astros or the Yankees would have beaten this Dodgers team, I really do. You can follow us on Twitter, @BombersPodcast is the handle. You can also send us questions. We'll try to answer each and every week in our mailbag segment here on the podcast. You can like us on Facebook, subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher. We're on Spotify as well, or give us a call, 646-854-4959. And as always, you can send your comments and questions to joe@BronxBombersPodcast.com. Really, however you'd like to engage with us. We love engaging with you. So just a programming note, our next episode after this will be released exactly 1 month from today on December 1st. I'm currently up to my eyeballs putting together a second podcast, which I'm really excited about. It's called Gotham Variety. It's not sports. It'll be a combination of audio theater in the tradition of the old radio dramas of the 30s and 40s, and interviews with various experts on a whole variety of topics, hence the title, Gotham Variety. Some music, too. Pretty free form at this point, but should something big happen this month on the level of a Stanton signing or something like that, I'll certainly have a special episode for you in response. But barring something of that nature, our next episode of Bronx Bombers will be out on Saturday, December 1st, and we'll just take it from there. Coming up a little bit later on in our Twitter poll this week, some interesting results when we asked if the Yankees should make a play for free agent Nathan Eovaldi this offseason, and I'll answer a fascinating question from one of our followers about the idea of signing Manny Machado in light of his latest hijinks. Also, he's the resident expert at the blog Yanks Go Yard. Our friend Mike Calendrillo rejoins the show to talk Yankee baseball. We'll hear part 2 of that conversation, and we'll get into some of my thoughts on the World Series and how those thoughts relate to the Yankees. All that and more coming up on today's Bronx Bombers. Back in a moment.
Bronx Bombers Trivia. What was the original name of the New York Yankees baseball franchise? Was it A, the Pinstripers, B, the White Sox, C, the Highlanders, or D, the Bears? The answer coming up a little bit later in the podcast.
And now here's Joe with this week's main thing.
So I watched the World Series in bits and pieces, and my main impression, not just of the series, but of the entire postseason this year, was that it wasn't great television for the most part. I mean, yeah, the marathon Game 3 was fun, but just as a baseball fan, what you look for, if your team is out of it, are competitive series, and there really weren't any. Well, there was one. The NLCS between the Dodgers and Milwaukee, that was it, though. I mean, the Astros destroyed the Indians and then were destroyed by the Red Sox. The Dodgers killed the Braves. Milwaukee swept the Rockies. And the Red Sox really ran roughshod over their 3 opponents. And what struck me most of all about the Red Sox was the fact that a number of players on that team who were not great all year really thrived. And that would include really their entire bullpen. bullpen, other than Craig Kimbrell, who was very ordinary, but certainly Jackie Bradley Jr. as well. Both of their catchers, Vasquez and Leon, did nothing all year, really, but each had very big hits in the postseason. And this was just one of those cases where everything clicked at once. I mean, obviously, they had a fantastic regular season with 108 wins, but they were truly at their best when it counted the most. David Price, who the Yankees have just absolutely massacred over the past few years and who has not been good in the postseason in his career, was great. And we saw the good version of Rick Porcello as well. Nunez had a big home run. So obviously, as a Yankee fan, I was hoping that they would lose. But mostly, my feeling as I watched them celebrate at Dodger Stadium, honestly, it was one of indifference, I would say. And look, if it takes the Red Sox winning the World Series and immediately after that trolling the Yankees by playing New York, New York in their clubhouse, if it takes that kind of pettiness to motivate Hal Steinbrenner to open up the safe and put a team on the field that can blow their doors off next year, then actually I'm glad they won. And about the trolling, and it wasn't just a song in the clubhouse. The Red Sox fans were chanting "Yankees suck" during the final inning of that deciding game in Los Angeles. I would say this: if it's your first impulse when your team is about to win the World Series to chant about another team that you dispatched weeks earlier, then you're doing life wrong. I mean, how insecure do you have to be that the Yankees occupy that much space in your minuscule brain and, that's what you choose to do? Not savor a victory, but focus on another team. And, as far as playing New York, New York in the clubhouse, look, first of all, it's a good reminder for Aaron Judge and our, very young team not to get too big for their britches when they haven't done anything. And that's what Judge did, I think, by blasting that song after winning Game 2 in Boston. You don't want to give another team bulletin board material after winning a single game in a series, as if that, that wraps it up. But even so, I would say the same thing about that, the Red Sox blasting that song right after they won the World Series. I would say the same thing that I said about the Yankees suck chants. If that's what you're focused on, the Yankees, 3 weeks after you've beaten them in the ALDS, there's something not just wrong, but really kind of small-minded about you. And after doing this for a year, this podcast and being active on Twitter about the Yankees, and I do have many Red Sox fans that follow me, it's abundantly clear to me, that Boston fans think way more about the Yankees than the reverse. Now, why that is, I have no idea. I mean, some inferiority complex, the fact that New York, is really, a major capital of the world, and Boston is essentially, a glorified college town with some nice history to it, maybe. Or is it the fact that the Yankees have 27 titles and Boston's still stuck in single digits? I have no idea. But I think the Yankee, obsession, I think it's fair to call it, among Boston fans and the players in that team, apparently, is kind of pathetic and sad. I mean, I guarantee you, when we win our next World Series, I won't be thinking about the Red Sox, not for 2 seconds. Having said all that, the Yankees have a lot of work to do this offseason to construct a team that can beat Boston next year. A lot of work. As I record this on October 31st, really the only two starters guaranteed to return are Severino and Tanaka. Both major question marks themselves. Our vaunted bullpen was remarkably inconsistent this year, other than Robertson, now a free agent, and Betances. And we really had lost seasons out of Sanchez and Bird. I would say Voit is still an unknown quantity at first, although there's reason to hope. We've also got major defensive shortcomings in our infield. Now, it's fair to say, so did Boston. I mean, Devers and Nunez are not good infielders, but they were good enough when it counted. And we've also got Stanton, the strikeout king, who does not measure up in any way, shape, or form to J.D. Martinez, and who was a horror show with runners in scoring position all year. Really, the whole team was. And we've got a manager who can't, at this point, hold Alex Cora's jock. I mean, I thought Cora, as much as I dislike him, something about his face just irritates me. I don't know why. How's that for in-depth analysis? But I thought he managed a brilliant postseason. Now, it helps when you've got Nathan Eovaldi out there looking like Justin Verlander and J.D. Martinez looking like Ted Williams. But credit where credit's due, Cora pushed almost all the right buttons with his bullpen, and that's really his biggest job job, and that's a job that Boone failed at repeatedly in 2018, including in the playoffs. So we'll see if Boone learned from his mistakes. If he didn't, I wouldn't be shocked if the Yankees bought out the third and final year of his contract and moved on. There's only a limited window here where we'll be paying Judge, Sanchez, Severino, Betances, and others minimum wage. And having a manager who's a liability is not advisable. So given all of these issues, really quite a laundry list of issues that Cashman and Steinbrenner must resolve in order to compete with a loaded team like the Red Sox. Now keep in mind, the team we just saw win the World Series is not the team that will take the field next spring. They have a whole number of critical free agents, including the aforementioned Eovaldi, Joe Kelly, Craig Kimbrell, Steve Pearce, Chris Sale has a club option. I'm sure Boston will pick that one up, but David Price can opt out of his contract. So there's some important names there that I just listed that are, as of this moment, not Red Sox. They are free agents. But whatever happens, Boston is not going to lay down and die. It's an organization that has a lot of money, and they have not been shy about spending it. And that's one thing the Yankees need to do. You know, there was a $50 million disparity between the team payrolls of the Red Sox and the Yankees this year. That's a lot, $50 million. And now that we've reset the luxury tax situation, it's time to spend. Wisely, but spend. So look, it's going to be a fascinating offseason. I mentioned the Red Sox free agents. The Yankees have a number of them as well, including 4 guys we picked up at the trade deadline, Jay Happ, McCutchen, Hechavarria, and Lance Lynn. David Robertson, who I hope they re-sign as a free agent now. Sabathia, who I hope they pass on as a free agent. Neil Walker, and there's a club option on Brett Gardner. So look, I'd be lying if I told you that given the run we just witnessed by the Red Sox and the myriad questions surrounding the Yankees, that I was overflowing with confidence that 2019 is going to be our year. It could be, and it wouldn't shock me. Nor would it shock me if we ended the same way we did this year or worse. But, as far as picking the Red Sox to repeat, and I said this back in March about Houston, and I was right. Every World Series champion looks invincible right after they've won the World Series, okay? And everyone, or almost everyone, is going to pick the Red Sox to repeat. But keep in mind, it hasn't happened since 2000, a repeat. Every season has its own rhythm. Every season has its own personality, its own trials and tribulations. We got hit very hard this year by the injury bug, and Boston did not. But, it's a very rare thing indeed for a season to play out the same way as the one did previous. And as someone pointed out on Twitter, the Red Sox have never had problems winning World Series the first 18 years of a century. It's the rest of the century that's been tough on them. So the Yankees brain trust needs to spend every waking moment figuring out a way to make 2018 a duplicate of 1918 and just keep that organization at single digits as far as championships for a long time to come. And sometimes part of building a path to success is looking at what successful teams have done. And Marcus Thames, our hitting coach, I hope you were listening when the broadcasters told us repeatedly that J.D. Martinez videotapes batting practice and then closely studies what he sees. It sounds like a small thing, but it's not. He got other hitters, including Mookie Betts, to do the exact same thing. And, his presence, J.D. Martinez, his techniques, his hitting philosophy really helped that entire lineup. So, success leaves clues, and the Yankees need to study the clues of what just happened, how the Red Sox were able to dominate so successfully in the postseason. The Yankees need to honestly address their flaws, all their shortcomings, which are very real, and put the shoe on the other foot and get back to winning championships. This business of getting outpitched, outhit, outmanaged, outthought, and outworked by a bitter rival is, getting old very fast. This business of devastating early exits and postseason futility is frankly unacceptable for such a proud, wealthy franchise. And I'll be honest, my faith in the direction of this ball club was definitely shaken this year. It really was. The truth is, I don't feel the same way I did last year at this time, that the best is necessarily yet to come. But I do still have faith that Cashman has a good head on his shoulders, and I'm pretty sure that Steinbrenner, based on his interview with Michael Kay a couple of weeks ago, is willing to shell out some significant money to put together a contender. But my attitude heading into 2019 is simple, and I can encapsulate it in 2 words. Show me. enough with the big talk, enough with the salivating over home run records, enough, waxing nostalgic about championship runs and dynasties from bygone eras. I don't care about any of that. It's time for this organization in the here and now to win, to put up or shut up, to do it on the field. And yeah, show me. Back in a moment. Back here on Bronx Bombers, and we're joined once again by our good friend Mike Calendrillo of Yanks Go Yard. You'll be hearing part 2 of that conversation, which we begin with a question about Luis Severino. And you mentioned Severino. I'm curious, does he meet your standard of an ace? Is he at the level of a Verlander or a DeGrom? Because he's talked about that way, but I have my doubts.
It's definitely understandable because he was amazing in the first half of 18, and then he just lost it. I don't know. Nobody knows what seems to happen. Maybe Pedro Martinez is correct in his assessment that Sevy told him he was pitching hurt and that he needed to pitch because that's what the Yankees told him. Now, this is hearsay and Severino has obviously denied it, but there's something to it because even in that wild card game, he was all over the place. I mean, threw 70 plus pitches in just 4 innings. I know he struck out 7, but he was not very accurate. And look, I don't know what happened. I don't know what rattled him. Maybe it wasn't an injury, but for me, an ace is a guy like you mentioned, Scherzer, DeGrom, a guy that is going to go out there and give you quality start after quality start. And Severino's got all the tools. And yes, 19-8, 3.39 ERA, struck out 220. These are great numbers. And for the Yankees, yes, he's an ace, but he's not the guy right now that you're going to put on the mound versus a Scherzer if you're in the World Series or versus a Verlander. It's not that he's not there yet, but he's only 24, so he's got plenty of time and he's got the skills. Maybe he'll work with Pedro this winter. Maybe I guess Rothschild's back. He'll work with him. I'm sure he's going to get better. But whatever ailed him in that second half was serious enough to derail what could have been a Cy Young campaign.
And where are you on the Machado sweepstakes? How much do you want him? I mean, how likely do you think the Yankees are to get him? And if we don't acquire Manny, I mean, what's our best option as far as the infield roster with Didi out for who knows how long?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the reason that Brian Cashman was so adamant about staying under the luxury tax threshold this year. If it's not for Manny Machado, it will likely be for Bryce Harper. And I know a lot of people don't like Bryce Harper, don't care for his attitude, but that left-handed stake in Yankee Stadium, it would be phenomenal. Whether you want to, say, well, it's not worth it, especially when you got Stanton and his bad salary, that's one thing. But I'm more concerned with improving, with scoring more runs. Going back to the first question that we spoke about, this 14 runs, it's not enough. So they've got to decide. I mean, the easiest thing is to slide Gleyber Torres over to short, his natural position, and you can plug in Tyler Wade at second, and we can hope that Didi comes back by July. That's not a way that I want to start a season. I don't want Neil Walker back again because, again, it's old hash. They could potentially go out and trade, who knows, Sonny Gray to San Francisco. There was talk. Maybe pick up Joe Panik, who used to be a St. John's alum. That could be a move, but these are short-term incremental moves that you don't know. Again, is it really going to make a big difference? Manny Machado, whether you want to complain that he didn't hustle the other night when he hit that rope to short, that's one thing. But if you got the opportunity to get a Manny Machado who is still in his mid-20s, I mean, this is a guy that's a game changer. And I know that getting him is likely the end of Didi, unless you want to get crazy in 2020 and you re-sign Didi because he's coming off an injury and you move him to second and you'd have to move Gleyber to third and then Andujar to left field. I mean, it's a lot of moves and it really screws up with your defense. But if you're looking to maximize that offense and keep some semblance of a good defense, because let's face it, Manny Machado's an amazing shortstop. I mean, you gotta he's a lot better at short than Didi. Didi's very, very good, but he's just not that type of player with the ability. And now with an arm issue, who knows? I mean, it's happening with the Dodgers right now with Corey Seager. You don't know what happens when you come back from Tommy John. Obviously, we've seen that Torres was able to come back and he looks great at second and he can still make the throw from short, but every player is different. So if he's there, if he's willing to come to New York, if he's willing to leave LA, you'd have to seriously consider throwing big money, and that's probably in the range of what Stanton's making. And I know a lot of people wouldn't love that, but do you want to watch Manny go to the Red Sox? Because as far as I'm concerned, Nunez is playing over Devers. Devers is not really the answer. So again, it's almost a game of keep away. It's part of the reason why the Yankees went out and got Britton, who was rumored to go to Houston and rumored to go to the Red Sox, and we got him, and he was good. He was fine. He wasn't great. So, do you want to go out and get a game changer, or do you want to sign a guy like Brian Dozier? I mean, these are your options. And at the end of the day, if Manny winds up in the wrong place, which, would be pretty much anywhere in the American League East because he killed the Yankees, then that's something that people will have to deal with. So, but you definitely, if anybody thinks that he's not a guy that would seriously help this team, you're delusional.
Now, Mike, one of several disturbing aspects for me of this postseason, really the whole season, and it sounds crazy to say this about a 100 RBI guy, but to me is the performance of Stanton, especially considering how much money and years we have tied up in him. I mean, it was a good season in many ways, but the strikeouts were brutal. I mean, 211, that's a franchise record. And yes, he hit 38 home runs, but with a few exceptions, they often seemed to be icing on the cake in blowouts. I mean, his home run in the wild card game was a perfect example of that. And the majority of the time, he just did not deliver in big spots. I think that was the case in the Boston series. I mean, 0 extra base hits. So, Mike, are you concerned about the Stanton contract? And do you think if he continues to fail in big spots in the playoffs and the boos get louder, that he might consider opting out after 2020? He does have a full no trade clause.
Yeah, that 2020, it looms large. I mean, if there was that rumor last offseason, which was funny enough, right after the Yankees traded for him, that the Yankees traded for him with all intentions of trading him to the Dodgers next season, because that's pretty much the only team that he would accept a no trade besides the Yankees. So, and then the Yankees subsequently would go out and sign Harper. Now that's a lot of moves, but you never know, because whoever thought that the Yankees would get Stanton in the first place. But your original question, I mean, yes, it was disappointing, but I can't be concerned yet. I'm not one of those guys that's going to go out and boo this guy. I mean, it was a new league. It was the first time in his career that he made the playoffs. I mean, the pressure on this guy was otherworldly, filling in for Judge, who was out for 8 weeks. And yeah, I mean, look, he led the team in home runs. He led the team in RBIs. He led the team in strikeouts. That's what Stanton basically does. He's a good outfielder. He doesn't have to play outfield as much anymore now that he's in the American League. But I think everybody just has got to pump the brakes on him a little bit. I think he's gonna be much more relaxed in year 2. I feel like his stats are going to improve big time. I know he hit 266, which, considering how many times he struck out, is not terrible. Still had an OBP over 340, and he's good. He's still only 28 years old. I mean, this guy, it feels like he's been around forever. But again, first postseason, 28 years old, playing in New York. The boos were out within the first week of the season, so I just wish everybody would just, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. I know we don't do that as Yankee fans, but look, this guy, when he's right, is still one of the most, if not the most feared power hitter in the game, and we've just got to let this play out. If everything goes well, he'll lead the team in home runs again. He'll have a battle with Judge next year, and like you said, there is that 2020 possibility of him leaving. But again, if he hits the way he can, we don't want him to leave, but we'll have to see. But I'm rooting for him. I want everybody to root for him because he seems like a little bit of a fragile dude. His confidence can get shaken pretty quickly, and we don't want that as Yankee fans. We want this guy to succeed.
Okay, final question, Mike. Assuming that Steinbrenner is willing to spend money this winter, having now reset the luxury tax situation, give me the top 3 things the Yankees have to do this offseason to get to the promised land next year and win our first title since 2009.
You have to develop, or at least figure out, who's going to be a leadoff hitter. Even if Gardner's brought back for one more year, which I'm not a fan of the idea, he's no longer an everyday player. Leadoff guy, he just has to be a high IQ baseball guy, has to be a great OBP guy. Not that it should be Aaron Judge, like, we were teased with that idea this year, but it has to be somebody that gets on base. Even maybe if it's Andrew McCutchen, who had an incredible OBP, even though his batting average was pretty bad once he came over from San Francisco. There has to be that consummate leadoff guy, a guy that's going to get on base, is going to make things happen. Maybe we don't even have him yet on the team. Maybe it's Glaber. Who knows? But somebody has to be developed into that leadoff guy that is going to work the count and then set the table. table, because that's what was definitely lacking. Gardner just didn't, he's showing his age. He wasn't there. Number 2 we talked about is definitely the rotation. Got to get younger. You never know with Tanaka. One pitch could be the end, and I don't want to play that game anymore. Sheffield, Lozoya, Chance Adams. Somebody needs to be given a real chance to earn the number 5th spot. We're not going to have Montgomery probably for most of the year. Maybe he'll show up in August, recovering for Tommy John. We know that Gray is going to be traded. Probably. We'll see who's going to take him. So you got to re-sign Happ, and like I said, you need a real number 2. Corbin's a must. Again, he's not an ace, but he can do really well. He's that type of pitcher. He's a ground ball pitcher in Yankee Stadium, and he can do really well. And lastly, it's in-house. It's Andujar and Torres need to get better defensively. I'd probably say Andujar even more so than Torres, because as you saw in the playoffs, Andujar didn't play in Game 4. You can't take a guy like Miguel Andujar and his bat and likely the rookie of the year out of the lineup completely. I mean, it's bad enough that you have to take him out as a late inning defensive replacement, but this is an athletic 23-year-old guy. Something needs to be fixed. I know recently, I forget the gentleman's name, but there's a so-called guru, an infield guru that was just let go by the Marlins, that the talk is the Yankees may look at potentially bringing over, because somebody needs to get through and figure out, is he capable, yes or no? If not, let's find a position for him that is, because this guy is just too good to have to worry about taking out in the 8th inning of a game, or not even playing, because he may or may not cost you a run or two in a crucial situation.
All right, great having you on, Mike. Love your blog. That's the Yanks Go Yard blog, which all of our listeners should check out for really high-quality, in-depth analysis. Mike, thanks so much for coming on the show again, and hopefully we can do it again during what should be another very eventful off-season, okay?
Definitely. I'm looking forward to it. December will be an interesting one, so thanks a lot, Joe, as always.
You got it. All right, we'll come back. More Bronx Bombers in just a moment.
And now the answer to today's Bronx Bombers trivia question. What was the original name of the New York Yankees franchise? The answer? C, the New York Highlanders. And now here's Joe with this week's Twitter poll.
Yes, this week's Twitter poll results are in. We asked you this: should the Yankees make a serious effort to sign Nathan Eovaldi this offseason? And 66% of our followers on Twitter at Bombers Podcast said no, and 34% said yes. And look, there's good arguments on both sides here. There's no right answer. This is a decision that Brian Cashman is going to have to make based on an unknown, which is, will Eovaldi's arm, which has undergone 2 Tommy John surgeries, hold out? I mean, that's a risk. But based on his performance this postseason with Boston, which was nothing short of spectacular, it may be a risk well worth taking, and I'm sure there will be teams lining up to take that risk. So the question becomes, which is the real Nathan Eovaldi? The guy who, when he was a Yankee, was very inconsistent, or the flamethrower that we just watched dominate 3 good-hitting teams all postseason, who was able to locate 99 miles an hour after throwing 90 pitches. I mean, that's what he did all postseason. I mean, I said this on Twitter. He looked like the bionic man out there all October. Now, I do think that Nathan Eovaldi has a tremendous amount of raw talent, and we saw it in stretches when he was here. With his first year with the Yankees, which was 2015, between June 20th and August 24th of that year, he was 8-0 with a 2.93 ERA. But then, elbow inflammation that September, season over, and then he was not good in 2016, 9-8 with a 4.76 ERA. Then he had his first Tommy John, was released in November of that year, signed by Tampa. He missed the entirety of 2017 after his second elbow surgery, and then had some other issues this season, loose bodies in his elbow, whatever that is. And then when he came back this season in Tampa, he wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. 3-4 with a 4.26 ERA for the Rays. But one thing he does not do is walk guys. In 57 innings with Tampa this year, just 8 walks and 53 strikeouts. And his success really ramped up in a big way in Boston. He was really good for them at the tail end of the season, but he was just a beast in the playoffs. But the question remains, which is the real Nathan Eovaldi? I tend tend to think underneath it all, he's a really, really good pitcher. I think the primary reason for his struggles over the past few years has clearly been injuries. I think he's got a huge amount of raw talent, as I said. I think he's very determined. I think he's young. Well, youngish. He'll be 29 in February. And the Yankees, we need warm bodies in that rotation, talented warm bodies, and sometimes you have to take a leap of faith. And if it was me, I would take a hard look at Eovaldi. I really would. I want no part of Sabathia. Sonny Gray is finished. Cashman said as much after our season ended. And Jordan Montgomery is going to be out most of the year after his Tommy John, so that's 3 spots to fill. And as I've said before, there are no aces in this free agent pool. But Eovaldi, the way he pitched this postseason, if he can maintain that or close to that, that's a big if, I know. But he really showed you ace-like capacity there. And if we end up with a rotation in 2019 of Severino, Eovaldi, Corbin, Tanaka, Happ, that's pretty damn good. I mean, that's formidable, actually. I get the arguments against Eovaldi. I know that Yankee fans were frustrated by him during his time here. I mean, I know I certainly was, but that's the past. Sometimes it takes a player a bit of time to find themselves. I mean, look at J.D. Martinez. So, I mean, I'm in the minority on this poll. If I'm Cashman, I'm on the horn right now with Eovaldi's agent, talking dollars and cents, and trying to get something done that's reasonable. All right, from this week's mailbag, our question of the week here on Bronx Bombers comes from Desmond in Queens. And by the way, the email is joe@bronxbomberspodcast.com, or you can find us on Twitter @BombersPodcast is the handle, or give us a call at 646-854-4959. If you have any questions you want to have us answer on any future episodes, we are more than happy to do so. And Desmond writes, I don't understand how you can say you want Manny Machado after what we've seen these playoffs. Not running hard and then not apologizing for it, grabbing his crotch, dirty play at first base against Milwaukee. How can you want this guy? Like you said all year, pitching, that's what we need. Well, thanks for that question, Desmond. That's an excellent question. And in my own defense, that segment that I did on Manny 2 weeks ago that was pretty positive, that was recorded before all the things that Desmond referred to in his question. I recorded that literally the afternoon of the evening when Machado did not run hard to first base against Milwaukee. So that's why I made no reference to that or the other things. They hadn't happened yet. But yes, Desmond, I was very disturbed by it. I hated it when Sanchez did it in Tampa this year. I hated it when Machado did it. I mean, you're getting paid millions of dollars to play a game. You're in the postseason. For God's sake, run out a freaking ground ball, okay? It's not too much to ask. And he did it again in the World Series, turning a possible double into a single by not running hard. But his comments to Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic were even more disturbing, even more baffling. Here's what Manny said, quote, I'm not the type of player that's going to be Johnny Hustle and run down the line and slide to first base. That's just not my personality. It's not my cup of tea. That's not who I am. Should I have given it a little more effort? 100%. These are things that you learn, things you got to change. I've tried changing it for 8 years, and I still can't figure it out, but one of these days I will, unquote. Just can't figure it out. It's not quantum physics, Manny. It's not advanced algebra either. Here's the deal. Run hard always. And believe me, guys, if this is what he's saying on the eve of his free agency, and if this is what he's doing in the NLCS and then the World Series, then believe me, he's never going to change, especially not with a guy like Aaron Boone at the helm, whose idea of discipline is, to give everyone a back rub and a participation trophy. So there's that. And as far as the crotch grabbing, just more evidence of poor self-control and unbelievable immaturity. Now, I do believe that was the only incident like that in his career, but terrible. And the dirty play at first base when he stepped on the Brewers' first baseman's heel, what's his name, Jesus Aguilar, and that could have caused serious injury there. And I think there was a similar play against Steve Pearce in the World Series. If you combine all these things, especially the not hustling, which is not new, by the way, Showalter called him out for this more than once in Baltimore for not running hard. Jim Palmer, Hall of Fame pitcher and Orioles broadcaster, called Machado pathetic in a tweet last week for the same reason, not running hard. But to do all of these idiotic things on the biggest stage, the postseason, on the eve of free agency, to me, speaks to something, I don't want to play psychologist here. I'm anything but that. But I don't think it's a huge stretch here to say that there's something deeply self-destructive at work here. I mean, this sort of childish, upraised middle finger to the world, I mean, it would give me great pause if I was the Yankees and Brian Cashman. So I hear you, Desmond, loud and clear. Now, to be fair, on the other side of the ledger, of course, is the fact that with Didi's surgery and his return date and effectiveness unknown, we have a clear need in the infield. There's Machado's youth. He's only 26 years of age. There's the fact that the Red Sox will likely make an offer that would keep him in our division, and that's a problem. And there's, underneath it all, his undeniable talent, which no one's arguing. He's very gifted. So, I mean, in his career, which began in 2012, he sports an .822 OPS, on base of .335, slugging at .487, 175 home runs already. A very capable infielder. I mean, he's no Didi, but certainly better than Andujar or Torres at this point. And he does not strike out a lot, which I love. I mean, if there's one thing we need, it's a guy that does not strike out a lot in this whiff-happy lineup. So it's tough. I mean, there are rational arguments to be made on both sides. If you think we should definitely sign him, I'm not saying you're stupid. I mean, there are reasons why the Yankees should consider it. I mean, maybe we're taking all this stuff too seriously. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I mean, maybe all the stuff that he's done this postseason could lower his asking price. I think both are certainly possible. But here's a question that Yankee fans should really be asking themselves, in my opinion. Which of the following two players, both free agents, had a greater positive impact on their team's fortunes in the postseason? Manny Machado or Nathan Eovaldi? The answer has to be Nathan Eovaldi. Manny had an okay playoffs at best and was god-awful in the World Series, hitting just .182, 0 extra base hits, and 5 strikeouts. And we've talked about Eovaldi's performance already, which was nothing short of superb. And he was used to perfection by Alex Cora. And so with Manny, I mean, there was an interesting report on Monday by Andy Martino of SNY TV, who wrote this, quote, "We're not here the morning after the Red Sox won their 4th World Series championship since 2004 to tell you that the Yankees definitely will not sign Manny Machado. But we are here to tell you that the baseball operations and scouting departments, which spent most of last week planning an off-season strategy, was not impressed by Machado's postseason antics and are now lukewarm on pursuing the former Oriole and Dodger, according to major league sources," unquote. To which I say, good. We've already got one expensive, extended contract that's a potential albatross, a Stanton contract. We don't need another one with a guy who, unlike Stanton, seems quite frankly to be a bad actor. Don't need it. So here's what I would do, Desmond, and here's what I think the Yankees will do. Go hard, full throttle at pitching. That's the mission. Construct that championship staff on paper and then go out and get it done by any means necessary. Trades, free agency, get it done. That is absolutely this team's fundamental mission right now. And then once that's accomplished, you see where you are with money. But I do not think, given the risks here, that we need Manny Machado. I do not. I think there's a path to a title without him. Maybe we trade for a Ben Zobrist to take over at second base, put Glaber at short, and then wait for Didi to come back. Maybe Neil Walker's the answer. There are other routes, and I think it would be a huge mistake for Cashman to just throw money at this talented but really irritating kind of man boy as if he's our sole source of salvation. He's not. Believe me. And if I'm Brian Cashman, I print out on a sheet of paper in big block letters, championship staff, and I tape that piece of paper over my bed. So it's the first thing I see every morning, and it's the last thing I see at night. Championship staff. That's paramount. Everything else is secondary right now. Important, but secondary. And that'll do it for this week's episode of Bronx Bombers. Again, don't forget, you can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. Find us on Spotify. Follow us on Twitter. @BombersPodcast is the handle. Like us on Facebook as well. But most of all, have faith in the Yankees. Enjoy the fall. We'll see you December 1st.